You're excited because we're excited because we got the writer-director of Blair Witch Project, and this whole episode we're celebrating 20 years of Blair Witch.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really been that long.
It has been that long.
Well, and it made me feel old because I was a senior in high school when it came out.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that it's been 20 years since I
How's that make you feel, Ed?
It's definitely been 20 years, man. There's a lot of mileage in those 20 years.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm just amazed that people still want to, talk about it and
Sure.
stuff. So it's cool.
Has it brought up just feelings, nostalgia with the Blair Witch game just came out. Now we're getting ready for the 20-year screening.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely, kind of makes you go down that road and, all the memories and all the great times and all the frustrating times. So yeah, it's like we've always said, man, I feel real fortunate to have been a part of it.
Sure.
So it's, I'm still amazed people want to talk about it 20 years later. So, if people want to talk about it, of course I want to talk about it. So,
I think we would exist in this weird spot, this nostalgic spot right now in pop culture in general, where nostalgia is just making a comeback for some reason, which is ironic in and of itself. But
yeah,
as a filmmaker, you got to kind of feel that nostalgia for those days when you were still fighting and scrapping to get that movie together. I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. I was, in my late 20s when we did that, and so it was like, we were, I just living the filmmaker life. You guys know it well.
Oh, yes.
No money and, driving a shitty car.
What are you implying about my life, Ed?
and his 1987 Civic.
Have you seen my 91 Civic? All right. That thing is beautiful.
I'm so mad that you don't have historic tags on it.
Yeah. So, but how it's, what it's like. You put all your money into the productions and everything. So it was kind of like, I don't know if it would have been the last hurrah, but it was kind of one of the last things that we were going to be able to do together until we got real jobs and stuff. But luckily it worked out and I didn't have to, declare personal bankruptcy.
Right.
So. The dreaded real jobs.
Yes, the real jobs. Yeah, we're trying to avoid that.
So what drew you initially to that story? I know you kind of have an affinity for folklore, like the woods. That comes out not only in Blair Witch, but in like your film Exists. Too.
Yeah.
So what draws you to that?
Really, Blair Witch was to us, Dan Myrick and I, we co-wrote it and co-directed it. And it was our love of like the show In Search Of and movies like Legend of Boggy Creek. And even like those pseudo, like the Search for Noah's Ark, that pseudo documentary, we love that stuff. It creeped us out, especially In Search Of. Even now, just Leonard Nimoy's voice and that music, it freaks us out. So we were like, this is like early '90s, and we had just seen like the Nightmare on Elm Street movie with Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold in it,
Freddy's dead.
Which is not the greatest Freddy movie. But and it was a fun movie, but it wasn't scary at all. And Dan and I were like, there hasn't really been a scary movie in a while. And we started talking about it. So we rented a bunch of these movies, these TV shows and documentaries, fake documentaries. And we were like, man, they're still really effective. And we were like, is there any way that we could do that, now,
Sure.
and at least when we were, early 90s. So we came up with the idea of like these filmmakers that went in and then their footage is, they disappear and their footage is found. And our whole thing was the footage was going to be found years later because we wanted to shoot everything on 16. Like we wanted it to be like a 1970s expedition.
Sure.
So it was almost a period piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it actually, it's a little bit of a period piece because we shot it in 97. It takes place in 94.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a period piece, but nothing, we realized that, it was beyond our budget constraints to like shoot everything on 16 and like get a bunch of cars from the 70s.
Sure.
It would have been like it would have been a whole other thing. So we switched we'd still had film in the movie, but we switched to high 8, basically video camera, which is what, a filmmaker would have used in 1994 to do behind the scenes stuff.
Sure.
And that was it. And we never expected the movie to, to go into the theaters. So that's why we shot it on high 8. People are like, well, why did you shoot it on a high 8? Well, it was the most easily available, format for us at that time. I think it's the only movie released in theaters that was ever shot on high 8. So that's a
awesome.
proud distinction there. Blair Witch was also born out of like my camping, experiences, like waking up at 2 a.m. and there's like something walking near your tent, and it's obviously like a little raccoon or something, but
you don't know.
No. And I remember one time we were
until it isn't
until they attack your tent. Yeah. But we were I was in early years of college, and we went out to the middle of nowhere to camp, and I remember my friend Pete Rohan and I were in a tent, and we heard something at 2 a.m, and we like just just got our necks up, like our heads up, and we literally like had our necks up for like 2 hours, just like kind of looking at each other. Like, what was that? What was that? So from that experience, Dan also kind of loved camping and just the fear of camping. So that's where really the scariness of Blair Witch came out. The idea of like, being in the woods and hearing stuff outside your tent or just beyond the reach of of what you can see, and hearing footsteps. Like somebody's out there, circling my camp. I mean, that's terrifying.
It is.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like archetypal. I mean, that's something that's rang through like Friday the 13th
right, that's
movies or anything
that's
else.
instinctual fear too, right?
Yeah.
Like that's fear of the dark. That's human. That's fear of predators.
Yeah.
It's also, I mean,
exactly.
you're in a tent, but you have no protection.
No, there's nothing. I mean, there's no protection in a tent. And also it's just, I think it's just comes from, us being, when we came out from the trees or whatever, just the idea of like living in woods, and, back then, like things could actually kill you. I mean, it's still things can still kill you now, but back then it was like that was like survival. Like if you heard
the reason we were in the trees to begin with is because stuff couldn't get up there.
Exactly. So it was a life or death situation to be able to be aware of your surroundings, and I think we still kind of have that in somewhere in our brain. That's why I think obviously horror movies are still very popular. Like people love to be scared, and still love to kind of be in touch with that part of their their humanity.
So what are some of your top horror films? I heard somewhere that you're
like
not the biggest fan of scary stuff.
No, I mean I was not, like, if you would ask me in film school, like, are you going to be a horror filmmaker? I would have been like, no, hell no. I mean, I like horror movies. I think there's some of the, when I was younger, like some of the best movies that I loved were horror movies, but I do not like being scared in the theater. Like, I don't like the idea. Like when I hear a movie that is like somebody tells me, oh man, it's really scary, I'm like, oh man, I gotta sit through this thing. But I mean, I loved, like, some of my all-time favorite movies were, Jaws, like, which is the ultimate monster movie. The Shining, and the original Amityville Horror, still scares me to this day. And The Exorcist was, to me, like, I think is the number one, like, creepiest movie. I think it was, my mom, we were kind of brought up light, kind of Catholic-ish.
Catholic light.
Because my mom has never liked going to church, but she was very religious and whatever. And so The Exorcist to me was like a documentary. Like, my mom was like, hey, here, sit down, we're going to watch it. And it was like the first time it had been on television, like in the, I guess, late 70s, early 80s. But we watched it as a family. It was like, hey, let's all gather around and watch The Exorcist.
It's religious.
Yeah, and obviously it was edited for television, so it doesn't have like the really naughty parts.
It was a TV version.
Yeah, it was a TV version. Because I think I would have like had a heart attack.
It's 15 minutes long.
It's really short. But that movie to me was like, my mom was like, this is what happens if you screw around with the devil. I mean, I feel like it was used as a teaching piece in a lot of households. Straight up, man. Straight up.
That's what happens when you don't listen to your mother.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there was, so that movie to me like really scarred me. And even now, like I feel like The Exorcist, along with like, there's a few movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like, I think something was in the set, something like primal that found its way onto the film.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Like, there's an insanity in Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
Like, there's no blood, but there's madness.
It's just it's like the most wrong thing.
Yeah, and it's brutal. That's the thing. Brutal. Like you said, there's no blood, but everything in it is so visceral. Yeah, and so brutal. Yeah, even when you're not seeing blood, you're still seeing the body.
No, and you're just like waiting to see what's gonna happen. Yeah. And I think The Exorcist was the same way. Like I think and you read all the stories of the things that happen on set and all that stuff, and I think that there were, he was, Friedkin was like messing with some stuff there.
Oh yeah,
that that was, that made its way onto the film.
Oh, that's entirely possible. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting you brought up those two movies, because I think those are, and Blair Witch as well, are three movies that use sound and music differently than a lot of other films. Like Exorcist, has of course the classic Exorcist theme, but the rest of the movie stays pretty silent, other than
Yeah.
some very low frequency drones.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, half the score is just metal
just
clanking
noises,
and like
yeah.
a generator buzzing.
Yeah.
And that weird flash sound. The whee.
Yeah, just like there's
That's-
no traditional instruments. And then Blair Witch lets you just exist in a wooded environment and lets that sort of exist to the score. So I think
Yeah.
for horror, something that really relies on music to create ambience.
We've talked a lot about some of this, like some of the most recent stuff. Ari Aster's stuff is terrifying because of the way that he uses sound editing.
Yeah.
And just the way that he'll use one particular themed noise throughout the entire.
Yeah. No, I think that, it's, I mean, especially with something like Blair Witch, which was like almost like a radio drama, because
Right.
like if you look at that movie, like 90% of it, you can't see the actors. It's basically shots of trees.
Sure.
So the sound is like the main thing, and all my movies are, I really do push the sound. I think it's crucial.
Yeah.
Especially
It
in
would
horror
make like the
movies, you know?
scariest This American Life episode
Yeah.
ever.
In film school, I remember my sound professor always say it was 51% of movies is sound, and
Yeah.
I believe that's true.
Yeah, I mean, even now, like you can, you can kind of get through like bad visuals, or like people understand like low quality visuals or even bad acting. But if you have bad sound, it's
Yep.
kind of like a non-starter, man.
Everyone
Yep.
becomes a critic. all of a sudden.
Yeah.
I was
doesn't
just
make
watching
sense.
the Friday the 13th Vengeance, the fan film. It's on
Oh,
YouTube.
yeah.
And to speak to that, the movie's brilliant and the practical in it is brilliant. The sound editing is so bad.
It's rough to get
and
past.
it completely takes you out of the moment.
Yeah, because I mean it's expensive, and
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
It's really distracting, and it's something that like when I was early in my film school, like there was that sound was just like you never. I mean you have to spend money to get good sound
Sure,
in film,
sure.
but it's so frustrating when like the ambient levels, like somebody's talking and then the background
Mm-hmm.
shifts every time there's a new person talking. I mean it's so frustrating, and like you said, it's so distracting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of filmmakers make that mistake where like they obviously the big thing is to get the movie in the can and try to start editing, but they run out of money and they just kind of half-ass the sound, and that's like the worst thing you could do. Like you really need to put some money away for sound and wait till to the end of the production for that to spend it, because it's crucial.
Wasn't that what you were just saying earlier today with Jesse, with your
Oh
thing
yeah,
that you're doing?
yeah. I just shot a monster movie and I'm editing it. I refuse to show anybody because I'm like, I have no monster sounds. There
Yeah.
is no monster movie with no monster sounds.
Yeah,
So-
don't put the typical like that. Every
was
single
pretty good.
monster has
Oh, it
the,
has that same weird
the
guttural.
predator
It's almost like
sound.
a purr.
Yeah.
It's
The
almost like you
clicky,
have to. Yeah, the
the
clicking.
velociraptor-y kind of sound.
Yeah, like and to me, I'm like, and I've used it in my movies, and it's kind of lazy, but it's so effective. But every time I hear it, I'm like, oh my god, every monster has that predator sound, But anyway, it's a cool sound. But yeah, man, I'd like to check it out.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you're-
Once I get
when
some
you're-
sound
when
in
you're
there,
ready.
when there's some monster sounds. So, what did you guys do for sound when you were on Blair Witch? I mean, did you just like record hours of a lav stuff just going, or did you?
We had no lavs.
Give Mike a couple extra $100 and you're like, you're actually the sound guy.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was, he had that big, digital, I don't know what the hell it was, but it was one of the early digital recorders that was just like a huge brick
Right.
around his neck all the time. But we trained him to get the audio, at least
Oh.
when we were shooting film.
So he was actually getting
He
some
was,
audio.
he was. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, audio is an art in itself, so
Sure.
it was pretty good. But there's a lot of technical problems
Yeah.
with it. But 95% probably of the audio on Blair Witch was recorded off the High 8 camera.
Oh, cool.
The consumer grade $500
Hell
Circuit
yeah.
City High 8 camera that we returned after we finished shooting. So it was pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
And then there was some lines that that the studio wanted to kind of revisit. So there was a little bit of ADR, and then the rest of the sounds were just us kind of adding stuff that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And we did 2 different sound mixes. We did one mix before Sundance, which was not great. And then Artisan, once they bought the movie, they had a proper sound mix. And that's when we really juiced things up
Yeah.
and made things like really, the way we wanted it to. But we never wanted it to be like, it was kind of one of these movies, like it had no sound, had no music. And we did have to have, you got to have some ambience. So we would add winds and kind of these weird noises. But we didn't want it to sound like, Transformers, you know what I mean?
Right, of course.
It had to sound like a home movie almost, and I think that was part of like the beauty of it, that it looked and sounded like a crappy,
like it's raw. Yeah,
like a crappy student film, or just behind the scenes of a student film, So,
But like you said, like psychologically, wind can do a lot. The environment becomes your musical score, and the woods can dictate emotion in different ways depending on how it sounds.
oh yeah, man, and you get like I've worked in the last 2 films with Studio Unknown in Catonsville. I mean, they are like, I've done 2 mixes at Skywalker. And I love Skywalker. I mean, it's Skywalker. It's you go to the ranch and you spend like 10 days there. It's like a vacation at the end of the movie. And they do unbelievable work. But Studio Unknown to me like is right up there. Like their work, I would compare it any day with any mixer, any mixing stage in the United States. So they really like the last 2 films, like especially Lovely Molly, which was the one, the previous one before Exist. Like we really worked on the sound and even changed like some of the, like we came up with the whole idea of a song, the Lovely Molly song during the mix. I mean, it was a really creative mix. But you kind of have to be open like that, especially with horror, because it's like, it's about surprising people and it's about, misdirection. And sound is like
it's a sensory
beautiful,
experience.
a great tool, especially if you haven't, you don't have it on, if you haven't caught it on, on stage, while you're shooting. The sound is all you have at that point.
So when Blair Witch got started, there was a lot of filming. From what I understand, you guys shot a lot of stuff that became the curse of the Blair Witch.
That was after.
Like
like the timeline is basically 96 is when we started like actually spending money and trying to cast it. Greg Hale, the producer, the main producer, got involved with me and Dan and me, and he gave us a little bit of money, and we were able to go start scouting, basically casting out of New York City. And then 97 was when we finally raised enough money. Rob Cowie at that point, the other producer, had gotten involved. We had raised enough money. 97, we shot phase 1, which is the woods, which is the stuff we shot in Seneca Creek State Park here.
That's right.
In
It's
Maryland.
like a block from where I grew up.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
I know that well.
We lived like my girlfriend and now my wife at the time. She was my girlfriend at the time. We had a little townhouse in Germantown, so it was like 10 minutes down the road from where we were shooting. So it was crazy.
That's
like
exactly, exactly where I grew up. That's
it
awesome.
was a great and it was a great location.
Sure.
And so we shot the phase 1 stuff, which was the stuff with the the students, and then the whole idea for the movie was that it was supposed to be like a pseudo documentary with like interviews and people examining the footage and detectives that had worked on the case and cops that had found whatever. So we went back to Orlando, and Dan and I started editing the 21 hours or whatever of footage that we had. And then while we were doing that, we wrote and directed all the interview stuff, all the stuff that was going to be in that, and eventually ended up in Curse of the Blair Witch. But at that time, it was supposed to be part of the movie.
Okay.
And we started editing. We got down to about 3 hours, I think, of footage, and we were like, okay, this is the footage that we found. This is the footage that was handed to us by Heather's mom. According to the logistics of the of what happened with the footage. The cops. What happened? The footage was found, handed over to the cops. They did an investigation on it, and then after about a year, they handed it over to Heather's mother, because she really owned the footage, and then she hired us, Haxon, to do a documentary about the footage and about the disappearance of her daughter and her friends. So that was the background story, So we had 3 hours to play with, and then we started inserting the documentary stuff, which was really good, but we found that every time we cut away from the stuff in the woods, we lost all the momentum in the movie.
Sure.
And then we would have talking heads for a couple minutes, and then we would go back to the footage, and stuff would get really tense, and then we cut back to somebody talking about the legend or whatever. And we just felt that it was distracting, and we never thought that the footage was going to work as a movie in itself, So that was the hardest thing of the editing process, is Dan and I going through and literally like cutting all this stuff that we really loved. And at the end, right before we got into Sundance, we had cut it down. We had basically made the decision to use like the first 3 minutes was going to be like a compilation of like just quick shots of all the stuff, like people talking about Blair Witch, and shots of the road, that they disappeared on, just kind of like a little 3-minute teaser, and then the footage was going to begin. And it was actually a cool little teaser. with this kind of like droning sound that kind of rose the whole time. And then at the end, it was like this big, and then the footage started. And it was really cool. But in the end, like the day before we sent it to Sundance, we made the decision to like just cut it out. We were like, it's not going to, because our whole thing was like, are people going to understand what's going on?
Right.
And, I remember talking to Greg Hale, the other producer, and Mike Manello. I think we were like in the office together, and we're like, nothing that we add to this movie is going to make it like a mainstream movie. It's like an experimental movie, movie. I mean, this movie is not going to. We had no idea that what was coming. We were like, this movie is not going to compete with like Hollywood movies, no matter what we do to it. So we may as well go with full experimental and just give them the footage, just have the movie. And we had a tight 87 minutes of footage. So we entered the Sundance, and then after the movie was sold, Artisan came to us and was like, we have opportunity with Sci-Fi Channel to do like a 1 hour special. Do you guys have any ideas? And we were like, hell yeah, we do. We've shot more than half of it already. So they paid us. Actually, that was one of the early. I mean, because once you sell a movie, you don't get the advance until you deliver it. So It took like 4 months to deliver all the stuff that they wanted. So we were broke. We were broke before Sundance. So after Sundance, we were really broke. So they were like, "Hey, we want you guys to do this, special." And we were like, "Yeah." So
I need work.
Yeah, we need money.
I need to eat.
Yeah, it's nice to eat every once in a while. So we basically wrote and directed and edited the Curse of the Blair Witch, and then it aired on Sci-Fi like the week of the release, and people thought it was real, and that was really part of like what really kind of propelled the theatrical kind of buzz. Okay. It was that Sci-Fi Channel special because that was more of like what the original movie was going to be.
Yeah.
Like that was really our original vision. And luckily we, ended up with this other version of the movie that kind of sparked in people's imaginations and kind of took off,
So did that Sci-Fi Channel sort of led you guys to go with that website idea and come up with some of the other strange marketing?
No, the website was earlier. The website was we basically shot it in 97, and then 98 I moved to Orlando to be with Dan and Greg and then Mike Manello and the other producer, and Rob Cowie, the third producer, got him, we're all together, and we were editing the footage at that point. And then we had a little bit of some buzz on this show called Split Screen, which was on Bravo back in the day. Back when Bravo was like on 15,000 homes, like it was like nobody saw it, but the few people that saw it, the discussion board on the Split Screen site blew up, and back then websites were just basically a few pages. And
it was the Wild West.
And then it was just a discussion board.
Yeah,
and then the discussion board was like all the other episodes, and then Blair Witch took over the entire discussion board at that point. Wow. And John Pearson was like, man, you guys got to put a website up or something, because people are, they're jamming our, our website.
A web what?
Yeah, exactly. So luckily I had done a little bit of web work before joining Haxon, and I built, with Front Page 98, I built this, website. And it started probably around like April or May of 98. We were still editing the movie. And then that website like really kind of started getting people really interested. And that's when there was a fan named Jeff Johnson, who was like one of the early people that kind of caught on to the website. He got on some, and I forget the name, but it's like a big morning show in LA. And he actually got the guys, the host, to like go on the website and talk about it for like 5 or 6 minutes, like about this thing. So after that, our website blew up, and it just kind of kept snowballing. And by the time we got to Sundance, we had 10,000 people on our mailing list, which is nothing now, but back then it was a pretty impressive, run for basically a website that we were paying like $15 a month to host, and that was we had no marketing. I mean, that was the end. That was all the marketing we were doing.
Yeah, nobody could find you. There was no Google.
No, there was nothing, man. I mean, I think Yahoo was around, but there was no
like GeoCities.
Yeah. Basically, GeoCities was where you had.
Well, no, I can remember as a high schooler when all of the promo stuff started coming out for Blair Witch.
Yeah.
And being in high school in Frederick, and people freaking out because there was this, discussion, is it real, isn't it real? And then the website came out and was like, oh, fuck, it's real. And like, I think it was probably 4 months after the movie was released that finally we all admitted it wasn't real.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, guys, the website's still up.
Yeah, it was crazy because it was like, as a filmmaker, you don't want the last thing you want your movie to be is like, kind of a hoax, like be treated like a hoax, like you're trying to fool people or whatever.
Sure.
And, so we made a decision early on that we were going to tell people that it was fake. But once Artisan bought it, they were like, don't spread the word around that it's fake too much. Yeah, it would be better. And we were like, all right, you guys do that, and they were cool. I mean, they never, we Dan and I did a lot of interviews. We never lied to people. I mean, they kind of said, no, you guys should tell the truth, but we're not gonna, we're not gonna highlight the actors. We're just not gonna
broadcast those interviews.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah,
if they ask you the question, they both just start laughing and they high five, and that's
kind of ignore, or just kind of do a Trump fake news thing. That's fake. It's a fake question. But they kept the actors out of the limelight for the first 2 weeks, so people I think thought they were really dead, and
I'm sure they loved that.
Oh, they loved it. They did love it. I remember being across the street from the Angelica in New York, and and it was crazy to go to Angelica, which is a place that the independent film market is there. So I went there with one of my early films, Gabriel's Dream. And it was such a disappointing, market for me because I never sold the movie. I mean, it was just, it wasn't great. But to go back to that same theater and have this movie that was literally sold out for a week in advance.
Wow.
Every single showing was sold out.
Just validation.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it felt good. But I remember sitting across the street with Mike and maybe Josh. And they were just they had to hide. They were like, I can't believe we can't go over there and talk to them. I'm like, yeah, man, you guys got to stay over here.
It's
man.
Shut up, get in your hotel room.
Exactly.
And close the blinds.
Yeah. So, but it was cool. I mean, I think everybody kind of enjoyed it. And then once they were, once the cat was out of the bag, they kind of,
we're alive.
They did their victory round and they did a lot of talk shows and stuff. So they were pretty happy.
Oh, that's great.
Well, being that it's October, I'm going to switch the interview to another direction for a second. Being that it's October, do you have any particular October Halloween traditions that you're into, or
I was again, I've I'm kind of a coward.
Same.
You know what I'm saying? So
But you love scaring other people.
I know I do.
I've said this a jillion times on this podcast. I fucking hate jump scares as a thing.
I hate it. Oh,
I'll hit somebody without thinking about it.
And a lot of times, a good jump scare is great, but most of the time they're so cheap.
Exactly.
You're like,
and it's just that it's coming, and it's really just a matter of being startled.
Yes.
Oh, it was a cat after all. Again. Okay.
Yeah. No, the only thing. First of all, I've been out of town working for the last seems like 3 or 4 years. I've been out, not here for Halloween with my kids and stuff. So this year I'm going to be here. But we usually bring some. We bring some of the props from some of my various movies.
Yeah.
Not only I have the cub, the Bigfoot cub. I put it out
it's sad, all cute. Dead.
Yeah, it's all dark and this hairy creature. I had this there's a movie that I did called Seventh Moon. We had we have this dog that's been mutilated. And I've toyed with the idea of putting it out there, but I'm like, my neighbors would freaking kill me. And then we put a fog machine and we put some scary music. And we turn off all the lights. So
awesome.
And also, I'm known as the Blair Witch guy.
Sure, of course.
Everybody knows.
So he's
my
gonna
house.
do something fucked up.
So something. But there's a guy in my neighborhood that definitely goes all out and has coffins in his front yard and
stuff. Feels like he's competing with you.
Yeah, I always go over there and he's like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Oh man, good stuff."
You got to get the masks from the VHS2 segment.
Yes.
Just put them on your kids and let them run around.
Yeah.
I like that you're the Blair Witch guy in town. I imagine all the little kids walking to school be like, that place is haunted. Ed's outside just mowing his lawn.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, or
weeding. Is it though?
Yeah, well, it's definitely haunted. I'm not sure what's haunting it, but no, it's cool, man. And I live in a regular suburban neighborhood, so it's cool. But no, I don't have like I said, I'm Cuban, so my parents I'm not sure how much Halloween was. Was
again go back to the Exorcist thing.
Yeah, it was not. My mom was not into that stuff. So usually for Halloween I'd be the $6 Million Man, or,
right?
Those bad.
I was raised by pastors, so we had harvest parties. We didn't have Halloween.
No, So nothing. There's no decorating for Halloween as a kid and stuff like that. So but now we definitely do it up as much as we can, and so we have some good time.
Hell yeah.
And it does freak kids out.
Yeah.
Little kids out, especially to come to the house. So We'll see what happens. I also have this head that I had from one of my early student films, and it's just basically like this middle-aged dude, like just head like up to his shoulders. So I bury him.
Oh yeah.
So it's like this really realistic looking head. In the dark, it looks realistic. If it turned the lights on, it was such a crappy mask, but it looks like somebody coming out of the so it's out of the mulch. So I do that, you know. So it's a creepy little place, but I don't go too far with it, you know.
No, not too far.
Well, I feel like it's a lot easier to be a coward about it when you're on the other end of the scare. When you're the one scaring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ed's like, I'm a coward as he puts out fake corpses to scare all the kids.
Exactly.
I mean, it's part of, you know, it's like you empower your cowardness by,
absolutely.
By lording over it. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that we've discussed on other episodes, a lot of us that got into horror at an early age did so as that. With that mindset that like, I'm scared of this shit, so I'm gonna watch it until I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like facing your fears.
Still scared of Pet Sematary.
You know, it's that thrill of it's fun, but it's scary. You know, that's
the problem is like when you were a kid and the thing would follow you into the bedroom,
right?
You know, into your like I remember. Again, like the Legend of Boggy Creek, like that scene at the end when the Bigfoot like attacks that house. Yep. It's like that was like to me the scariest. Like I always thought that I was going to wake up and see Bigfoot looking at the window at me. I mean, so and the same thing with aliens. Like I was convinced that there was aliens in the back of my apartment complex, and stuff,
or that they're going to come down. Yeah, exactly. There is kind of like a chasing the dragon element to horror of like, you know, always chasing after that feeling of being scared as a kid and the magic of like that these things could be real. You know, I think everyone's sort of as a horror fan chasing that feeling a little bit as an adult.
Well, and I think everybody also has that one or two movies that no matter how old they get, no matter how much they understand about the industry and how things are made, is never not like Pet Sematary for me is never not going to be scary.
Right,
like that fucking cat in Pet Sematary is never not going to
I saw that way too early, and that Achilles tendon thing. Oh my goodness!
What did I just watch?
I like still to this day, like I know. You
still know, but it doesn't
if I'm barefoot next to the bed, I'm also thinking, you know,
it doesn't matter.
Make sure there's nothing down there. No, it really those movies really are the stuff of nightmares, and if you watch them too young, you know, even when you're older, sometimes the movies kind of somehow they get you.
Oh yeah, I just watched The Shining recently, and despite how beautiful of a film it is, there are some really, really upsetting things in The Shining that you kind of get desensitized to until you watch it again, like 15 years later.
Did you catch that 4K restoration?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
nice.
And it's.
Is it 4K?
I mean, it's shot on
film
in like 1980.
How many Ks?
So like it doesn't matter how much 4K it is, but it is definitely. I mean, I noticed more in the sound than the actual.
That's the whole thing. They clean up and also I noticed a lot of the like I finally put like a projector in my. In my basement, so I have like a 125-inch screen with like 7.2. So I mean, it's nice. And I watched recently Predator, and I was amazed by how many out of focus shots are in those older movies because that's basically once you got it, you didn't.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, you got it. You're not going to go back and shoot these little close-ups or whatever.
More
and I haven't noticed that in I haven't noticed that in Shining, but I haven't seen the.
That's
I haven't
Kubrick
seen
was an insane person,
and also they did like they would do like 50 takes and stuff.
And there's probably 47 of those that are out of focus.
Yeah. But just and I think that it kind of brings up the whole idea of like how different things were back then, man. It was like everything was manual, and it's like sometimes you get hit there, you're like, oh my god, it's out of focus. Well.
You're literally wasting money.
You gotta use it.
Yeah.
You gotta use it.
What really got me about the remastered version of it, like I said, the sound, and also it helps you focus a lot more on how crazy of a person Jack Nicholson is in real life, and like how hard I don't think he was acting that hard.
No.
In The Shining, like I've said this before. There's a scene where he's talking to the bartender, and it's shot from the perspective of the bartender. And you can hear the bartender talking, and all you can see is the way that Jack Nicholson's face is slowly changing. Oh my god! Like I had nightmares about it that night.
He's like a loaded gun, man. You just point him in the right direction as a filmmaker and just let it go.
Well, yeah, and I think like Kubrick was kind of famous for that. And that's one of the things I learned about. The biggest lesson I learned from Blair Witch was like that sometimes the best thing you can do as a director is back away and let the actors and now like I do a lot of television and let the crew do their work because and I think Kubrick kind of like set these things up and just let Nicholson go, like just go wherever you want, and I think and the same thing with Blair Witch, like it was so difficult to like hand the cameras over to the actors and like literally be nowhere near when they were shooting our film. You know,
Right.
it was it was something Dan and I had to really get used to. It was really difficult for us. But it taught us that, you know, if you get the right actor, I mean, you got to cast the right people, obviously. You have to have the right crew, and, you know, you have to have professionals. But if you hire the right people, man, they are, you know, people are, you never know where a great idea is going to come from. And, you know, while Blair Witch was very much, you know, the story that Dan and I laid out, you know, the actors filled in, you know, everything, you know, and then we went in during the edit process and really directed the movie during the edit.
Right.
But yeah, it taught me just kind of back up sometimes and kind of get out of the way.
Sure.
Is a skill that a director should have.
I think that's important too, because I mean, ideally, you're hiring people you trust, and they should be there to be excelling at what their job is. And I feel like it's smart to let people do that, and then if you have to reel them in from there, do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, you know, you're not going to go with every single idea that people throw at you or whatever, but I think that, because I've seen the opposite. I've seen like on certain sets where
the myopic director,
where people like micromanage everything, and it's, you know, to a certain extent, it's demoralizing, and also I think people stop basically caring, because it's like, well, that's not my decision, so why should I care, you know? So I think that there's you know, filmmaking is the most collaborative art form, and I think you have to really embrace that, or else you're going to be in trouble. Unless you're like a super genius, like, you know, James Cameron or somebody who can do everything or whatever. But there's very few of those people out there, you know.
Right.
Yeah. No, I like that you have that view of it. I like that you have the view of it that it's a collaborative effort, and everybody's, because I think that you're right. That does make that invests your crew, personally, and says, okay, guys, the final product is. It's
everybody's. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they become more invested in that.
Oh, and they love you, and they, you know, they do really great work. And the same thing with actors. Like, you know, there's very few times where I go and tell an actor, I need you to do it this way or whatever. It's like, basically give me your interpretation of what, you know, either I wrote or the writer wrote.
Yeah, going to be guided from there.
Yeah, and they've given that character a lot more thought than anybody else has. So it's kind of sometimes you know, disrespectful to like go in there, especially in television, when, you know, the actors have been living with this character way before you got there.
Yeah.
So it's very much just like point the camera in the right direction and give, you know, help with the blocking, and then just let the magic happen, you know?
Yeah.
So that brings up one thing I wanted to ask you, is how much of Blair Witch is scripted versus improv?
Everything is improv.
Okay.
Like, all the dialogue is improv.
So you just tell them what to talk about?
I had a feeling.
Yeah, I mean, basically what we did was, Dan and I had like, it was like a, you know, I don't know if it was 25 or 35. It was like a 30-page script, you know, in final draft with no dialogue. And we broke it down into days. You know, we had all the beats. You know, we knew that it was going to end up in a house, in the cellar of a house. We didn't know what the hell was going to happen in that cellar until about 3 days. Until about 3 days before we shot it.
You guys were playing some jazz on
Dude,
this one.
Holy shit.
It was, you know, I mean, like, how do you end a movie like Blair Witch?
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you end it? Like, you know, our whole thing was like, you know, do you have a creature? Do you show the witch? Do you have Mike hanging from, you know, the you know, like the rafters? I mean, how do you end it? And luckily we came up with that ending like literally like 2 or 3 days before we shot it. But what the hell was I talking about? Anyway, I forgot
How much was improv versus?
Oh yeah. So basically, you know, the script was, you know, had all the days mapped out.
Sure.
And then we didn't show it to the actors, so, you know, they had no idea what was going to happen. They knew that from
Their script just says do something.
They had a lot of trust going into this movie.
Oh my God, especially Heather, because it was, you know, like most crews, it's, you know, especially back then, it's mostly dudes.
Oh yeah.
So she was literally like, I mean, my girlfriend and her sisters were involved, but that was, and then there's a couple of other women that were involved, but mostly it was just dudes. You know, it's just filmmaking dudes out there. And just the amount of trust that she had to be out there, you know, because we, you know,
in the
bad
woods with
things
a crew
could have
full of
happened.
dudes.
Yeah.
Well, I think that some of that does translate though into the film.
absolutely.
You could see, and a lot of her reactions is just like, I'm fucking tired of being surrounded by men.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, Dan and I's whole thing was like, if we put them, you know, we build this like a 8-day play, and we just let them, you know, just simmer in.
Yeah.
Sleeping uncomfortably in a tent and being cold.
Well, again,
and being
you can see
hot.
all of that.
Oh, you can see all of it. And especially like if you look at the raw footage, man, like there's so much arguing. Like people are always like, why don't you release all the footage? I'm like, first of all, I don't own it, so I can't do anything about it. But I mean, I think you could do a longer version of the movie, but not too much longer because it's literally like
8 hours of them just
90% yelling at each other for all kinds of reasons, man.
Everybody's like, I came just to get away from all the yelling.
Yeah, I know. No, exactly, man. I mean, and we were like, and actually when it was one of the reasons why in the original version of the script, Mike, the sound guy, is the one that disappears, and then Josh, and Heather are left alone. But while we were watching the footage, Heather and Josh were just at each other's throats the entire time, and it just got old. It was just like,
just get this guy out of here.
It's just too much. So we were like, let's pull Josh, and then we can fix in the editing. We can make it whatever we want. And he was really happy to leave too.
I'm sure.
Oh my
well,
god.
There's one
I'm dead. Great
scene in particular where after Mike fucking just throws the map away.
Yeah.
Her reaction in that scene is so. I don't even think that was acting. I think
No,
that was
no.
just days of.
No, dude. I mean,
pent up,
and
I
that
fucking
was,
hate you.
I like how he kicked it too.
oh my god.
It's like of any way to move a piece of paper, he chooses to kick it. I like that. That's aggressive.
I kicked that map in the. I mean, and that was like the first scene we saw, because that wasn't scripted.
Okay.
That there was it was pretty unbelievable that they followed our little directing notes so carefully. That they really did deliver 99% of the script that we wrote, but that scene was just an improv moment.
Oh, I believe it.
He kicked the map like the day before, so the next day was just like, who has the map? Where's the map? Man, the map. And then he was like, he told me later, he was like, I was just waiting for the moment to like, when do I tell these people that I kicked the map into the creek? So and so when we watched that footage, we were watching it like you guys watched it.
Yeah.
Right.
We were watching it for the first time. There was no, there was no monitor on set that we.
Sure.
We were just popped the tape in and we were watching it, and our jaws dropped and we kind of looked at each other. It was Greg, me, and Dan, and we were like, all right, maybe we have something.
Yeah.
If we're like,
There's a delirium in his voice when he says it.
Oh, Mike goes off.
And then her reaction is just, you what? That's fucking amazing.
well, and then actually like when we saw Josh. They get physical.
Yeah.
Which is like, you can't, that's not, that's a no-no.
Yeah.
We have one map, guys.
Yeah.
One.
Yeah, exactly. So I think,
Maybe you should have brought
they
two.
definitely took they definitely took our motive, our foundation, and
Sure.
they kind of ran with it. But yeah, a lot of it was, and especially at the end, we stopped feeding Mike, and I think they were down to like a banana and a power bar a
Just
day.
stop paying craft services.
Yeah, no, there was no craft services, man.
This is some like
There was-
Ridley Scott level. Let me fuck with these
Oh,
actors.
dude, we even the way we directed them, like we made a decision to like not talk to them, like cut any kind, like have the personal contact down to like a minimum. So we would basically do these directing notes that each person would
Right.
get, and they weren't allowed to show each other. And we would leave it in a basket along with like fresh batteries and videotapes, and sometimes we would do like preloaded 16 millimeter mags for Josh to load the camera, just anything they needed, and then their food, the little bit of food that we were giving them,
And then a cracker.
and then a couple saltines.
So now you're adding this level of psychological
Oh,
isolation.
absolutely.
Holy
So
crap.
so they were just like, and I remember that the scene where the tent shakes, like they
Yeah.
wake up and those little kids are
with the hand wrench.
yeah, that's the end. Yeah, where the kids are like, they wake up and the little kids are like playing outside the tent in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what the hell is that? I remember that scene. The CP16 had a little malfunction, and we had to reshoot it. We had to be like, all right, we're gonna, we have to come back and reshoot you guys running out of the tent. And I remember there was like 5 or 6 of us in the crew that were there, and while Neil Fredericks, the DP, was like fixing the camera, making sure it was going to work, I just realized that all the crew, there was a couple of crew people, they were talking, Mike and Josh, and they were talking to them, and I went over there. I'm like, guys, don't talk to them. And their faces were like, I mean, they just wanted to talk to somebody else.
Sure.
And they were just stuck with each other.
Or just,
you hug me?
And I remember like just
Am I
their faces
real?
like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, you can't, don't talk to them. Come over here and just stand away from them. Like I want, Dan and I wanted them to be completely
Well, that's brilliant, though.
as much as possible,
Putting them in that
you know?
headspace is brilliant.
Yeah, and I think that part of the magic of Blair Witch was that, it was just that they really were kind of, they were acting. I mean, they were super talented. They're super talented actors, but I think that they were totally in this, they were uncomfortable and they hadn't showered and they were just,
well, and I mean, there's the famous scene from Blair Witch that everybody knows of Heather crying. And I'm so sorry. Like, it's been made fun of so much after the fact, but I remember seeing that in high school in the theater thinking this is a girl who is close to breaking. This isn't funny. Like,
it's
this
an amazing
is a girl who's legitimately just lost it.
I mean, that's why it's been spoofed so many times, is because it's like iconic.
Yeah.
I mean, her performance there is amazing.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, it's like I've talked about it a lot, and that's the same reaction we had when we saw that scene also. Like,
did we go too far?
Well, we were like, because the direction was like, you're done. You're not going to make it out of these woods.
Right.
Kind of like an internal voice. That's how we would direct them, and we would be like, you're not going to make it out of these woods. You need to go to, find a space away from Mike, point the camera at your face, and just give us your last words to your family, to Mike's family, to everybody. This is your goodbye to the world.
Wow.
So she went off, and obviously she was really inspired and just kind of knocked it out of the park. But like, just like the the rawness of that scene, like I've said this a lot of times. Like I put Heather, I mean all of their performances, but especially Heather's performance up against anybody. Like I think Gwyneth Paltrow won the Oscar that year for Shakespeare in Love, and great performance, but like. The fact, and to me, I was like, I'd put Heather's performance right up against that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so real.
It was so real, and I think people, first of all, horror movies get no respect at the Oscars.
No,
yeah, of course.
And but I think people thought that it was some kind of game or something that they were playing, like that they weren't acting for some reason because it was so real. So I don't think the actors ever got the accolades I thought they deserved, especially Heather.
Yeah, I think this is kind of how this Blair Witch gets that feeling, like we talked about with Texas Chainsaw, where it's true madness. Like you really feel the insanity of these characters.
Yeah.
And there's, I mean, of course, the found footage stuff adds to the rawness and the realness of the feeling.
Yeah.
But I think that's why it's able to hit something really primal like that.
Well, and then there's a brutality to it as well. The same way with Texas, where it's there's no blood in Blair Witch, but none. but
well, a little bit in the teeth and the
but it's like it's just like raw evil.
Right, that's what I'm saying. There's a visceral nature to it.
Yeah, like Chainsaw was the same way. It's just like how this is hell on earth.
Yeah.
And I think especially at the end of Blair Witch, like when they go into that house, that's hell. That's like freaking, like
Absolutely.
that's
the culmination of all. Like
and it's but so it was it was very much an experimental film that that somehow ended up working, man.
So what I think is really cool is, man, it was 10 years before found footage really picked up after Blair Witch with Paranormal Activity and stuff. Obviously, with technology progressed a lot, so by the time Paranormal Activity was hitting, everybody had GoPros on everything. So there's a lot more stories to tell in that vein. But I'm just kind of curious why you think maybe it took so long for everyone to look at this movie, see an obviously affordable way to make effective storytelling, and then be like, nah, I'm going to wait a decade.
It was amazing to us too, because like we came back from Blair Witch. I remember we came back from Sundance and we had a discussion of like, you could do any movie this way. You could do comedy. I mean, really Spinal Tap was almost found footage-y kind of, so that was before Blair Witch. So, and we were huge fan of that movie. So, and a lot of people ask me like, where was the if there was anything, was there any kind of prototype to Blair Witch? And it's really Spinal Tap, like at least for me, because I hadn't seen like Man Bites Dog, or there was a couple of
Cannibal Holocaust?
Yeah, I had never seen Cannibal Holocaust. I mean, actually, Cannibal Holocaust, if Dan and I had seen that movie, we wouldn't have done Blair Witch, because it's really the exact same storyline as Blair Witch.
It's a little bit more brutal.
Well, they kill animals and stuff, but like structurally, it's really the original idea for Blair Witch. So if we had seen that, somehow gotten like a hold of that VHS before the movie, we wouldn't have done it, and I wouldn't be sitting here with you, lovely gentlemen.
Yeah, see.
So now I'm glad that you guys didn't know about him.
Yeah, exactly.
Ahead of time.
That's just like luck, because I remember the movie that had done the rounds when we were in high school was Faces of Death.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And then other people
Yeah.
were like, oh no, Capital Holocaust was the movie that we passed around and stuff. And then it's funny because Blair Witch became that movie later on. Like people were literally shifting, sending, unlabeled VHS tapes to each other. Like,
I remember those days. Yeah, the face of the death always freaked me because that was the kind of thing. I'm like, is it real? Is it not? I have
Wait,
no idea.
Didn't they come out after the fact and say that it was like a 40-60 split of what was actually real? And it didn't matter at the time.
Yeah,
it's the mystique.
when I was in high school, it was like, Face of the Death, and I didn't see, and I was scared to see it.
Yeah, me too.
Totally up front. Like I'm like,
too.
nah, I don't want to see that. And then finally, we got a tape of it, and I mean, you could tell pretty even in my high school with my limited, filmmaking knowledge at that time. I was like, there's an edit right there.
Right. Yeah.
There's an edit. Once there's an edit, you can do of course you can fake it, so yeah. But the mystique of that, like the mythology behind that.
Oh, yeah.
And other people told me, well, Cannibal Holocaust was our Faces of Death. So luckily for Dan and I, that movie didn't make the rounds when we were in high school.
Right.
But it's such a brutal movie, man. Cannibal Holocaust.
It really
Well,
is.
and even like outside of the gore in it, like just the shots in it are brutal. Just the quick cuts in it are just like.
And like you brought up the animal thing. I mean, it's just like,
well, and that's
once you know about that, it makes the movie a lot more uncomfortable.
when there's a darkness to that.
Yeah.
the director's just like, get that chicken.
Yeah, let's fuck up that
Go get
tortoise
that
real
cat.
quick.
Oh, the tortoise one.
That's the one that was the one that hit me the hardest because I remember watching it the first time at like 13 and thinking, it looks a little too real for me to be comfortable. And then I find out, 10 years later that I watched the
it's
actual
a tortoise, dude. They're like,
No, there's no
they're not going to
mistaking.
hurt anybody. They're
No,
going
no.
so slow. You're just going to like, hey, get that tortoise.
Yeah.
Why? You'll see.
You'll
No,
see.
it was.
Was Edison involved?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, let's talk about the 20th anniversary thing at the Weinberg for a second.
Yes.
So, did you guys? Was there ever a point where you considered doing anywhere else besides Frederick, or was it?
Well, we've done. There's, the Sundance did one.
Okay.
And that was early in the year, and that kind of like, I mean, look, I thought the 20th anniversary thing was going to be like, oh, whatever,
Showing it like McDonald's somewhere.
yeah, or whatever, I didn't know. I mean, I thought, all right, people are going to do it because they did something, 15 year. They did a bunch of interviews and stuff. So I'm like, I'm doing interviews, but I didn't think people were going to do screenings. And then the Sundance screening, we went to it, and I wasn't expecting much, but it sold out, and it brought back like there was like a bunch of people in the wait line, like the wait list line, just like it was in the original screening.
That's
they did
exciting.
it in the original in the Egyptian where the movie first played. So it was kind of like 20 years later, a lot of the same people were there. Our lawyer was there. We have different agents now, but our lawyer was there, and all the original Hacks and partners were there, and it was like there were like. People were really excited to talk about it and to talk to us about it. And it was like, and I was like, man, there's no other movies in 1999 Sundance that they're doing 20th anniversary screenings for.
Yeah.
So there must be something special. And then a bunch of other people started doing 20th anniversary specials. And I realized like these screenings are really cool. I mean, people come together and everybody has Blair Witch stories. So I came back from New Orleans. I worked all in New Orleans the entire spring, on this show called Queen of the South, and I got home and talked to Carl Glorioso, who's a good friend of mine who runs the Frederick Film Office, and I said, we're doing all these 20 anniversary screenings all over the place, and we did one in Florida, and there's one in New York that's coming up this month, and I've they were inviting us to so many that a lot of them I couldn't go to. And I said, it'd be cool to do one in Frederick. First of all, it's, close to Burkittsville, which is, where the center of the movie is supposed to take place. And then also, the people forget that, there's a lot of people worked on this movie that are still around locally that have really nothing to do with film other than Blair Witch. So for me, it was a chance to kind of bring as many people that worked on the movie as I could together, just to get to talk about it and to like share in it before we're all dead.
Yeah. Hell yeah. We're excited about it.
We're both going to be there.
That's cool. And then we're doing a VIP thing, and all the proceeds are for charity. So so we're doing a VIP thing before, right across the street, and from the Weinberg. It's the New Spire.
New Spire.
Oh, New Spire.
Arts.
Yeah, I think we're going to be there for that.
And so, listeners, all you guys can go to our website, campnightmare.com, and go to our events page, and there's info up there, how you can get tickets to that screening and what's going on and stuff like that.
Yeah, but it should be cool. we try to get as many people down here. Mike Williams is coming
Cool.
from the movie, and a lot of the local people, a lot of the local actors that did a little bit parts in it, and a lot of the crew and stuff. So it's gonna be cool, man. Cool. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
so cool.
So I saw you got a chance to play the game, the Blair Witch game recently.
Oh my god.
So scary.
Oh my god, really scary.
I have PS4, so it's not even an option for me. Oh yeah.
You know, it was, first of all, it looks amazing. Like I've never seen woods like that. Like the thing about video games is that you can light them.
Oh yeah.
You can actually light it like
Like you want.
like reality. Like, you know, a movie can't look that way, you know. So you actually, it looks like you're in the woods at night,
like
you know?
moonbeams.
Moonbeams, and then just the background, like the blue, kind of the bluish sky against the trees. I mean, it's just a beautiful game, and it freaked me out, man.
Oh, I'm
especially
sure.
the house, you know, because
I've watched like 15 minutes of gameplay on YouTube, and I had to turn it off.
Yeah,
I was
no,
like,
it's
there's a sense of dread.
Yeah, there's a sense of, and you know, and I was like, you know, in between two ladies, and we were like, you know, having fun, and you know, we were in the studio with people around and stuff, and they gave me the codes for like to play it at home, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna play it at home. Man.
I'm good.
There's no need for me to play it at home.
I don't want my kids to see me. I don't want my kids to see me cry.
You die the game. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, and it's really cool because, like, especially in the house, like, you know, we've been in the Blair Witch world for so long, and we wrote a sequel years ago, and we have plans for a prequel. We've pitched a couple of TV shows. Like, we've been in the Blair Witch world for a long time.
Sure. And
the stuff they do in the house is stuff that, like, we've thought were like, you know, like there's I don't know if you guys saw it, but there's a place where you go in, you know, you turn the corner, and there's a room that, like, the wall is there's a hole in the wall, and the room beyond the hole is like totally like vintage, like new.
Oh yeah,
like a
time.
There's a fireplace, and there's a little, you know, lamps and chairs and stuff, and you walk up to it, and you're like, holy crap, this is exactly what we wanted to do.
Goes with the time
in the
warps.
movie. Yeah, and then you kind of back away, and then come back, and now the room is dilapidated, it's aged, you know. So just really cool stuff like that. That they experimented with, but it's a fun game. I mean, it's like you know, it's a nightmare. Again, it's like a nightmare, but that's kind of what you want out of a Blair Witch game. You know?
Well, he's much more into horror game. Like horror movies are one thing, but when I'm personally involved in a horror, it's
way scary.
Yeah.
He's way more into
Way
that.
scary.
Well, especially the sound.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Oh
What was
my God.
what was
Alien
the-
Isolation? It's like the sound design alone is just. I'll come in, the game's on pause. I'm like,
No,
It was Evil Within was the one that did it for me. The Evil Within made me had to stop playing horror game because I think I got 10 minutes into that game.
that game does not care about your psyche.
And
at
I
all.
played it at like noon with the windows open as bright as possible, and it still
Can we
scared
pump
the shit
some
out of
more
me.
sunlight in here somehow?
Yeah.
When we were doing Blair, right after we were playing Unreal,
Yeah.
and that game, I mean, it's not even that bad, but
No.
that game freaked me out.
Well,
man.
yeah, and it's meant to, and that's the thing is that it's not. I think that there's a whole generation of kids that are just so desensitized now that like it doesn't freak them out.
Oh,
but like,
yeah.
you know,
well, my son though is like 16, and he's like an avid gamer, and he won't play any horror games.
That's fair.
It's so much scarier. It puts you literally in it. I mean,
Well, because you can be in a movie theater. Usually you watch movies in a group or whatever. Sometimes you can, but with a video game, you're like so into it, and then if you use headphones, it just becomes a
God help
totally
us all.
different thing. Man. It's tough being a coward, man.
It's not for me.
Yeah,
I've lived as long as I have because of my cowardly ways.
It's safety is what it is. You know?
Exactly.
and I've been just slipping through the cracks
Like,
the whole way.
If we're talking like on an evolutionary scale, I'm surviving.
Yeah, I'm backing away from any danger.
Exactly.
Maybe the last thing we'll talk about is Portals. I see you've got like another anthology-based thing coming. I'm really interested to hear a little bit about that.
Portals, we shot it like almost 3 years ago, I think, and it was kind of one of these, like really low budget anthologies where they just give you very little money and you kind of have to figure it out.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, it sounds. I mean, it
sounds familiar.
and it's that's the way it is. And it was some of the same people that were involved in VHS. The VHS series were involved in it. So they asked us back, and Jamie Nash, who's the writer that I've worked with for a long time, he came up with this really cool little script. And then Greg and I, my partner, directed it. And like I said, we shot it like 3 years ago. We edited it like 3 years ago. And it went through a lot of trouble, like problems. Like they ran out of money, and there was some creative differences with another, one of the other filmmakers. And honestly, I was really surprised. Like early this year, they were like, "Hey, we got distribution for this, and we're gonna call it Portals and this and that, and I was really surprised because I was sure that we were never gonna be able to see that. I was never gonna be able to show that movie again. But our movie's like this. It's like the first movie in the anthology.
So not the overarching top layer narrative, but you're the first segment.
There's a top layer, and then we're the first segment, and and then it goes back to that, and then back and forth.
Cool.
But there's some really cool films in it. Ours is it's kind of like we have Gretchen Lodge from Lovely Molly's in it. We have Paul McCartney Boynton from Altered. We tried to bring as many people from our other films into the mix as possible. We were trying to get Tim Chu from Seventh Moon, but he got a really good paying gig that day. So we were like, nah, go do that, man. Go do that. But it's a cool little movie, and it basically introduces this idea of like these things, these portals that are appearing all over the world. And then and they're not really explained again. It's kind of like just a science fiction-y kind of thrillerish. And it's good, man. It's cool. I'm looking forward to everybody's checking it out.
Do you know when we'll be able to see that?
I think the premiere is coming up in LA, and then I think it comes out in November, I believe. Cool. But it might come out later this. I don't know. I wish I would have had. I should have looked. We could look it up.
That's fine.
I think it's November. It's coming out on VOD.
And is there any particular streaming service it's coming to, or do we know?
I don't think. I don't know yet.
Okay.
But it'll be available pretty much everywhere.
Sweet.
But yeah, it's cool, man. And like I said, it's got some really great performances in it, and it has it's really cool to be able to, for a movie that you thought was gone, all of a sudden to like it's really exciting. And
that's awesome.
And it was a lot of fun too.
Well, yeah, I think that's everything I had.
Yeah. Thanks so much for
thank you so much for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me, and I'll come back whenever you guys we live right around the
corner
from each
How
other.
far are you coming? You're not coming too far.
No, I'm Urbana, so it's like 15 minutes, really.
Man,
20
that's
minutes
awesome.
at the
Hell
most.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hell
So.
yeah.
Well, we'll keep in touch, and we'll be hanging out again on the 18th.
Yes.
October 18th at the Weinberg Center.
Hell
It's
yeah.
the Blair Witch 20-year anniversary.
We'll both be there.
JB and I are hanging out. Ed's going to be there. We got
It's
cast
gonna
and
be
crew
fun. We're gonna be giving stuff.
Everybody else will be dressed
away.
nice. Jordan and I will be the ones wearing the
We're going to be the ones trying real hard.
T-shirts and ripped jeans.
We'll be the God bless them for trying, guys.
Exactly.
I won't be much more dressed.
We'll be
than
right
that.
there with Ed.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you
thanks
so much,
again, Ed.
man.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for listening. Check us out at campnightmare.com. Follow us on Instagram at camp_nightmare. Support our brand new Patreon, patreon.com/campnightmare. And listen in next week. Thank you guys.